Brendan, let's start today's show with some Houston Rockets trade swap courtesy of Kelly Iko, Shams Charania, and Sam Amick over at The Athletic. A lot you could go in there in this piece. The fact they're looking at another center to me, I find quite weird. We could talk about that if you'd like to. But there's this line that I'm going to read. And this tells me that we are so back in NBA trade season. I'm pounding the table in excitement over this because I can't believe we're here again. Houston, quote, Houston has made an offer, including multiple first-round picks for Mikal Bridges in recent weeks, but the Nets have shown zero interest in any deal involving Bridges, who is part of Brooklyn's core moving forward. Brendan, once again, Mikal Bridges being reportedly sought after for multiple first-round picks from other teams. We're going to get this every year until he's like 95 years old at this point. I love that this is just a bit now.
So here's the thing. I'm probably going to do a TikTok on this soon because I don't think it's getting enough attention when we're talking about buyers and sellers, and it's going to be this way for a while in the NBA. You can follow us on TikTok at Just Basketball Fans, but the Nets don't have their pick, and actually the Rockets have their pick. So that's just not happening for that exact reason. The Nets would be getting worse, and then not only sending Bridges to the Rockets, but also sending their pick, which would get better, to the Rockets. That is a double whammy that the Nets would not want to touch with the 10-foot pole. So, no, I do not think that the Rockets are going to be the team to convince Joe Tsai and Sean Marks to give up potentially the player on the best contract in the entire NBA. So I think that's why Bridges is not going to be traded anywhere, because they don't want to be bad enough. In fact, I think we should be ready for maybe some buying and selling on the part of the Nets. But as far as Bridges goes, this doesn't surprise. It shouldn't surprise anybody. I think I mentioned on the podcast a while back when he came up, or when the team came up, that they are doing him and they are doing their players no favors by the way that they've built this roster out. I think I teased a let's put Tyus Jones in Brooklyn trade when we were talking about our teams that should make trades, simply because everybody is having to do much more on offense than they ever should have to do. And so if I were the Nets, tell Houston to go F itself, get a point guard on this team, try to win as much as you can down the stretch, chase the play-in. Why not? You don't have your first-round pick anyway. And see what you can do over the offseason to replenish and restock your roster and make it make more sense so that you're not stuck in purgatory for another season. I'm done with the get rid of Bridges. I'm done with everything. Fire Jacques Vaughn. I think that dude's a really good coach. Yeah. The Nets are the problem right now, not any of their players or anything else. So no to all of this.
The other kind of interesting nugget here is the one I had mentioned before, which is just the part about them wanting to maybe trade for a center. And I don't really understand this either. I don't understand what the need for a center is in Houston when you have Alperen Sengun. What is the need for a center when you have a budding all-star center already, to me, is the question. Now, you could look at depth, and the names are sort of interesting because there's a variation of names that they're keeping tabs on based on this story. Kelly Olynyk, Clint Capella, former Rocket Clint Capella, Andre Drummond, and Robert Williams III. Conceivably, all of them could be backups, is kind of real. Capella is, I think, a higher price-wise end of a backup, and there's also not really connecting skills among these guys either, which doesn't make sense to me.
Well, that's what's funny. If you read the paragraph in there, right, it says the Rockets are exploring the center market looking to bolster their rim protection, and then the first name listed is Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not a rim protector. Andre Drummond is not a rim protector. Andre Drummond can eat some innings for you. And
more than anything else he does. That's probably like what you would put on the resume first if you're his business manager, but he's not. But that's to your point, right? He's like a bottom... a bargain bin guy, and these other dudes are like have been starters. So it is
and like weird. then Robert Williams is obviously someone Udoka has a connection with, so maybe there's some of that, and that's kind of where that comes from. But he's out with injury, and if I remember correctly, he's not going to play this season due to injury. So like you're buying this
Most
for
likely,
next season, and which is sort of like the it's like doesn't fall in line with the rest of this piece that the Rockets and Udoka in particular wants to make a playoff push right now. Williams is to me actually the name, Brendan, that I actually like for this team in some ways, because I think cost-wise it's not super high, and you could, I think, find a way to play him and Sengun together at times, and I think based on his health, that's a guy it might be smart to just make him a 20-minute-a-game wrecking ball and make him like a really good bench piece for you and really manage him and kind of release him in controlled waves, right? That to me would make some sense more than these other names on this list.
He makes sense for exactly that reason, and it dates back even longer than just this article or this deadline, right? This is a team that heavily, aggressively pursued Brook Lopez, and that became kind of a meme because the Bucks had to pony up, and the Rockets were so thrown off, and then they give this huge, weird, only 1 year guaranteed contract to Jock Landale from Phoenix out of nowhere as their backup, but he's actually a backup, where, again, as you said, Brook Lopez would not be, and so I'm not sure what they think the best fit next to Alperen Şengün is, but it seems to be very different than what most people would think. And you're not going to acquire a Clint Capella, even if his contract does go away soon and you can maybe have him on a more reasonable salary. He's probably overpaid for his production right now. Maybe he goes into a Drummond, Robert Williams type of slot eventually. And these guys can become your backup, but right now, some of these names are players that would almost have to play next to Şengün because of how much you're paying them and what their kind of role would dictate in the NBA. So they seem to think that they need to play two bigs next to Şengün. You've heard Udoka say outright Alperen Şengün is not a rim protector. I think that was a quote that came out from him recently, and I might agree with that, but it's also what your team is built around. So you don't hear Michael Malone saying, yeah, Joker's not a rim protector, so our defense is kind of fucked. Like that doesn't really, it's just it is a strange thing, but you mentioned Ime Udoka. I just mentioned Ime Udoka. That is the part of this article that I focused on, Chris. Can we cut it out with the acting like this dude is the next John Wooden? They make it seem like he's the only guy in the Rockets organization that had ever heard of the phrase winning games. They're like, this guy arrived and he just wanted to win. It's like, well, yeah, I think they all wanted to win. They just couldn't before. I mean, he's a great coach. I think he deserves a lot of credit, but literally this line is in here. Udoka's appetite for winning is strong, hailing from the school of Greg Popovich and carrying that approach in Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Boston. Now, I'm not trying to attack the people who wrote the article, but that's hilarious. What is the approach that's being referenced in that line? Winning games? His approach is winning? It's just hilarious. That like it's such a puff piece for this dude, as if he's the only guy who's ever won basketball games as a head coach.
Yeah, we've kind of gotten past the point where we get descriptors with some of this sometimes. Guys just kind of have reputations of what they do, and therefore that's like what they are, and I find that silly. Like, describe it.
His approach is wanting to win, so he's one of 30 coaches who could be described that way.
Yeah, I don't think like Wes Unseld Jr. is like trying to not win. I don't think the problem with the Wizards is that he doesn't want to win basketball games. You know what I mean? I don't think. Why am I blanking on his name? Steve Clifford is like, you know what? I just didn't want to win this year. That's why the Hornets are so bad. You know?
No, his was the exact opposite. Did you see that viral quote from him of he got challenged by Terry Rozier and he was like, we're not coming in here with this and that. I'm like, okay, well, then there's the other side of it where it's like, if you go too far talking about how actually, even though you're losing, you do want to win, it actually kind of digs yourself a bigger hole where it's like, well, then do it. But yeah. I just thought the Udoka thing was kind of funny. It's like, as I've argued, I think Houston needs to maybe tread a little bit carefully.
Mm-hmm.
I think skipping steps is a big risk in the NBA, and if you just get good enough very fast, that doesn't always pan out as well as it might seem the first season where you do that. You know, what steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 are for them are going to be just as important as hiring him and getting some of the stability that Van Vliet has brought and whatever else. They're going to need to build a championship contender, and I don't know if they're there yet, and I don't know if any of the things listed in this article would make them that even Mikal Bridges, frankly.
They're also the winning thing is funny because they're 2 games under 500 and 11th in the West right now. It's not like this is a team. It's
his approach, man. He just wins.
It's not like they're 30-15 and pushing the Clippers for the 4 seed. They're 11th. They're 10.5 games back of first place. They're 4.5 games out of the top 6 in the West. This is a fine, improved team that is not a juggernaut waiting to happen if they go get a different, some more helpful role. We knew they were skipping steps based back on the summer. This is I think where you end up if you keep trying to do that.